All right. Sorry. Let's get into it. So we're gonna do first thing I want to do is look at let's pull up our project and take a look. All right. Get rid of all this stuff that doesn't need to be opened. So let's open my Unity hub. So Viking Village class, that's the one that we're running that I'm using with this. If just by the way, also if you're getting into this and if you weren't here for last class, or if you're just getting started with this thing, you may need to watch the last class lecture where I go through and I talk about how to fix it, because there's all sorts of weird issues with the Viking Village. And so there's a few things you can go in there to fix to get it to work, get it working again. If you haven't done that, I mean, it's not too bad, but I mean, you just have to go through that process. So if you need to fall back and recall any of the fixes. So we've got our Viking Village, and last class what we did is we added some torch sounds. So we figured out how to add, and let's open up my FMOD projects. Look how we linked the two of these together. So all I did was I had a torch right here, remember? And so I had my little torch sound that I created, and we added it to all the different sounds, the different torches throughout here. And we just added FMOD Studio event emitter, and I said I wanted to do this torch. And in the torch scene over here, we got the torch playing. But like I said, there was a number of steps that we had to jump through to get to that point. Sorry, I'm trying to find my chat. There it is. I hop between Mac and Windows so much that they both handle how we do this, how Zoom works is different on both systems. It's really odd. All right, so we have our torch in there, and that works fine. And when we play, just to recall, let's get this thing in play. Make sure that it's working. Yep. I don't like the sound of it, but I think it's good enough for now. Cool. Now what we want to do is we want to add some sounds to, say, this crane thing over here. They've got a couple of these like crane looking devices things here. So let's add some sound to, is this one moved to animate too? I can't remember. So we've got two of these different kind of crane things, and we want to add some ambient sound to it. So when we were working with when we were working in Wise, like part of the challenge here with all game audio is to make a lot of sound with a little bit of with few amount of resources. So adding things like layering, randomization, pitch shifting, volume shifting, that kind of stuff. That's how we want to be able to create variation, so that something's not looping. And most modern games that we play these days are actually pretty good with this sort of thing. I remember back in the day, though, there was some things like character, well, even still sometimes with character voices when you're playing like whatever, like run around in melee type games where it basically, or even like real-time strategy type games where basically you have like you hit on a commander or something like that of some unit, and it goes, yes sir, or whatever. Or like I remember we used to play Gauntlet. I don't know if you guys remember this game. This is an ancient game from like the 80s, maybe even like, yeah, it was late 80s. This game called Gauntlet. We used to go play it we paid so much money for this thing at the arcades, and then it came to Nintendo and we got Nintendos, and it's just they've got like all these like health ups when you like drink the health potion. It goes wah wah wah, and it would just like do the same thing over and over and over. Or I don't even play like the first StarCraft. Like when you played StarCraft and you select on units, they would respond to you, and it was so annoying. It gets burned into your brain that over and over and over they would say the same thing. Or even like some early hockey games, like they would have like the hockey like on what system was that? I think it was PlayStation. On basically we play PlayStation hockey, and it would like the announcers would say the same thing when you play, whenever your player would get the puck or you take a shot, and it was so annoying because they would say the same thing so often. So the video is, of course, creating variation with this sort of thing, and so because our brains are really good at picking up on repetition. So what we want to do is, like, if we want to create this thing, we'll call this thing I'm going to create a new event and it can be a 3D or 2D event. And actually, what's interesting is if I choose a 3D event, for instance, and I want to a 3D event means it's going to have spatial mapping with it. So it's going to use this spatializer right here. So if I get closer to it, it's going to use this attenuation curve right here, and it's also going to do some positional information. But I can also just go through and delete this thing, and now it's a 2D event. So I just created a 2D event, or if I create, for instance, if I create a 2D event, I can turn it into a 3D event by adding my spatializer. So now it's a 3D event. So it's not like this is a huge deal. That's the difference between the two of these, but you have the ability to, it's kind of a shortcut. So we want this to be back to be a 3D event. So actually I'm just going to delete this and start it over. So let's just add a new event, clean 3D, and we'll call this thing crane. Let's assign it to the master bank. And now we need to add some sounds to this thing. So going off what he did in the video, we want to create some creaking and some squeaking. So let's I'm going to use Nuendo for this because I have it's going to be a lot faster for me to create these today. So I'm drinking a smoothie and it's very fruity. I can't remember you got Eric that you remember Gauntlet. That's awesome. Okay, so this is what I want. Let's find some sounds. You're not gonna be able to hear these things, but I'm gonna do wood creek. Yeah. Ooh, that's good too. Let's just do this one. Keep it simple. I need to split channels, change the sample rate. Cool. I only want one. I only want one of the channels. Select the tracks. So what I'm going to do next class is, I didn't have time to go through and do it today, but what I should have done is done this in Reaper because I want to spend some time, and that's what I'm going to look at next class, is look at the Reaper FMOD Unity integration or FMOD Reaper integration. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how these two. I use Nuendo for all my stuff because I think it's the bee's knees for most stuff that I do, but I realize that most people don't have this, and I think that talking about Reaper would be a really good thing to do. Just because that's what's used heavily in the game industry for a lot of good reasons. So I'm going to call this one, these are creaks. Let's change this. And I want some squeaks. Let's just do metal. We want some metal. Hope if I spell it right. And so I've got like, ooh, that's good. These are actually really good. I just got lucky on that one. Metal hinges. Let's try that. Let's see. I know you can't hear it. It's because I'm using I could set it up so that because the reason you can't hear it is because Zoom, it says I'm going to listen to the computer sound, but I'm using ASIO, which talks directly to the hardware, so it bypasses the OS stuff. I mean, not to get into too deep for today, but one of the reasons that why ASIO works so well, if you work in Windows Pro Audio at all, you use ASIO as your driver instead of the Windows driver because it's super low latency. And the reason for that is because it allows the software to speak directly to the hardware outputs with bypassing the operating system. So essentially, ASIO bypasses the entire Windows operating system like sound, so that basically you can speak. That's how you get low latency audio. That's one thing I think that Core Audio does way better on Mac. Mac makes it stuff so much easier. But let's grab some these door hinges. I think these are kind of cool. Let's see, we've got hinge 1, 2. I've got a whole bunch of these things. Let's just grab all of them. 11 through here. One track. Split channels. Cool. You'll be able to hear them when I get them over into FMOD. So what I want to do is to just as a quick thing. So basically, if I were doing this as a real game, I've got my fire up here, I've got my creeks. I could create, what I would probably do is let's add a folder track just so I can keep things clean. And I would call this one crane. Let's add these into the crane folder. Oops. Let's colorize these so I can tell what they are. And I'm gonna add actually, well, actually, let's take a look at this creek right here. You can't hear it, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this thing up into discrete creeks. Probably go to there, there. Just kind of what I'm trying to do is create some random, so each of these are kind of like a groan. It's like basically what the sound is. It's a huge boat that's creaking as it rocks back and forth, but it gives it this kind of like ominous creaking sound, which I think mates well with the visuals with what we see. Let's cut that one there, maybe even one here. That'll work. And what I want to do is now create marker tracks for this one. So I'm going to create a marker track, add track. And the reason it makes this things a lot easier for exporting for me. Let's go P, create. What I'm doing is I'm creating markers. What do they call them? Cycle markers. Oops. So I click on it, create the match the timeline to the selection, create a marker or marker track loop. Is it, oops. It's not like a loop marker, but it's kind of like one. I used to have some some shortcuts set up for this, but I don't have it programmed right now, and I can't remember what I used to use for it. So P. Cool. So those are my creeks, and let's get my squeaks. I'm just gonna fortunately those ones are already kind of like already done that way, so I don't need to do anything. So I'm gonna create a new marker track for that one. This is one of the kind of cool things you can do with Windows. You can have multiple different marker systems. So call this one squeaks. And let's put this above here. Make it orange. That drives me crazy when they're not the same. And there's no reason that these are just going orange. It's just so that I can keep track when I start making, as the session gets bigger. I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. I'm gonna go here. I need to make a shortcut for that. Those look exactly the same. Whatever. What I'm trying to do here is go through the actual process of creating these effects. In the video, he just assumes that you have these effects, and sometimes you need to see how like kind of the process is done for getting these. This is my process. You can come up with your own. Yeah, these are like exact clones. Everything got imported twice. Oh, because it did the left and the right. Okay, so I need to go delete every other one. Okay, here's that. Maybe. Ah, screw it. Doesn't matter. Even if they're doubled up, that's okay. I don't have time to deal with it. What I could do is, process these a little bit different. I'm on this track. Say N. Cool. Submit project. All right. Without even doing anything else, I would normally go through and do some more processing and layering with these things, but I think I'm just going to go with it for now. So I'm just going to export, and this is why I think this stuff is so rad, because I can I'm going to output of just the, let's call this one, rename this one Squeaks. So what I can do is I can output this, the master output, or I can output just out of the individual tracks if I wanted to. And so in this case, I can output multiple channels or just a single. So in this case, I'm just going to go output creaks, and I'm going to, if I did multiples, I can say I can output both a master mix and also the stems if I wanted to. So that's kind of convenient. So I can output multiples at the same time. But in this case, I'm just going to do single. I'm going to do creaks, and in this case, I'm going to go through and do. Actually, I think might need to do multiple. I'm going to do cycle markers, and I didn't name the markers over here, but because I'm on this track, these markers are going to show up. Let's see. Just double check on this. This first one was how many? 8. 1 through 8. I'm going to do this. Let's do this marker right here. Track of squeaks. Let's get creaks. And the reason I'm doing this is just so I can I'm just doing this so I can tell for sure what which one I'm on. This one has what, 18? School. I'm only doing that. You'll see why. When I get back over here, so because I see that I'm on squeak 1 right here, and I want to be on the other one locators. I want to be on creaks, not squeaks. Why is that selected? Maybe I want to be on creaks. So I have to basically, there's this little check mark here saying which one's the active one right here. So that's the active one. Now, so now if I go back into, oh, come on. So now I'm in creeks, which is good because that's the active marker system here. And I want it to export each individual of these, and I want them to have the name. Let's call it the track name and cycle marker counter. Cycle marker counter. Put that in front. So what it's going to do, let's do it as not name, but channel name. Cycle marker number, okay. Should be putting a 0 there. I could just put a counter though, that's fine too. Let's do that. So what it's going to do is it's going to do 0000 creeks dot wave. So, and it's going to name each one of these. It's going to go 00001, 0002, 003, 004. I don't know if I need that many leading zeros. Can I change that? Yeah. Digits, let's do 1. That works. So now it's going to go as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I export audio and says, where do I want to put this thing? So renders. Yep. I'll just export it there. Not very fast. Cool. Now I'm going to do it again for the squeaks. Enable this marker. Go do squeaks, output. So squeaks. What if I need to do digits? Might as well just do 2 just to be safe. I'm going to do all of them. So I'll have, what, 18 squeaks, which is ridiculous, but I don't care. Cool. So now it'll export 18 of those. I don't know why it's so slow. It's odd. Should have gone really, really fast. And I didn't do any plugins or any adjustment or any tweaking. Usually it's considered pretty poor form to do what I'm doing right now, just to use a sound effect straight out of the gates. You would usually do some sort of processing and clean it up and stack them and make them a little bit more of your own. Just doing this is not really that cool. Just using a raw library sound. All right, let's close all this. I need to close it, but I'll just minimize everything. So let's add the crane sounds in here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a multi-instrument in here. So before we just did a single one. So now in this case, I want to add a multi-instrument, and actually let's add the sounds to the project. My audio bin. Let's find my export that I just did. Export. What was it? Where did I put those? Rendered. Cool. Oh, it's annoying that I did it like that. So let's add all of these except for the torch. I'm going to add a new folder. So here's my squeaks. So creak. Whoops, I put that in the wrong folder. Cool, got squeaks done. Let's get creaks done. And then I'm actually gonna make another folder. I'm gonna add these two into the, cool. So let's go add these into, I'll just leave pulls off to the side. I want to add some, let's rename this one, call this one creaks. I'm going to add those into the multi-instrument right here. Cool. And we want to add squeaks. Let's add another multi-instrument. And we want to add the squeaks into that one. It's ridiculous to have this many squeaks, but that's okay. Whoops. There we go. Cool. Let's stretch that out and we'll be able to see them. So now you can kind of see the waveform, which is kind of nice. So let's just audition this real quick. Let's just mute this one and let's listen to this one from the top. Were you guys hearing that? Stretch that out. So we can kind of see the brackets, by the way, zoom in and out is the left and right bracket, the square brackets. So we can see basically if I drag this thing way out, we can see where it ends. It gives this hash mark, meaning there's no sound there. So it's going to play to this end no matter what happens there. So what's annoying is though I can't drag this one over here in the timeline at all. It always puts them at time 0. And it's going to go through this and it's going to do the shuffle. So we have shuffle and random. And I believe random, I believe shuffle it won't play the previous one, where random, it can play the previous one. It's not entirely obvious to me. I haven't spent much time with that one right there. But what we want to do is we want to get this thing, like let's just loop this thing so we can hear it. Oh, so I have it going. So it's playing right after each other. Yeah, I like that. It's got some hiss and some noise to it. You could use some restoration on that sample, but that's basically That's pretty good. Okay, let's add some squeaks into this thing. So squeaks, same deal. Let's stretch this out so we can see a little bit better. I'm gonna make this bigger. So we have a lot of them in there. So what do we have on shuffle there? We'll just leave it on shuffle. And let's solo this one out. I like that. It's got some squeaky, some little, just that, it's just a little hinge squeak, but it's going to add a little bit, it's going to add some richness to this thing so that it basically it's going to overlay on top of this one here. So let's stretch this one all the way out so the same. It doesn't have to be. I mean, you don't have to actually do that. But what we want to do is we want to add a loop section for this thing. So add a loop region so that it's going to loop this whole section here. Actually, I could go even a little bit further if you want to create a little bit of dead space in there. I want these things to start so they're not always exactly starting at the same time. Actually, in fact, if I want to change this, if I want to stretch this thing out a little bit, and I want to add some randomness, because basically right now, if I have these right here, fortunately these squeaks don't exactly start on the 0. So like these ones all kind of start on the 0 right here, but we want to have a little bit of space, because if you have them all lined up with a creak and a squeak, we don't want the creak and the squeak to happen exactly the same time every single time. So what we want to do is, by actually stretching this thing out a little bit, I want this to be a little more intermittent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and we can actually do on the trigger behavior right here, we can actually do delay and quantization. So I'm going to delay this thing right here, delay this time right here, and I can delay this by a certain amount of time. And actually, I don't know if I can add automation to that one. Nope, I can't. I was hoping I could add some sort of randomization to this one right here, but unfortunately I can't. I don't do the same thing here. I'm like, well, I guess I don't need, that's a constant delay, wasn't it? I guess maybe it is the delay interval. It's going to be random in there between 0 and say 500 milliseconds, so a half a second. So that's going to create a little bit of variation in this thing. And same thing, I'm going to do the same on this one right here. I'm going to do by time, and I'm just going to have this one delay just by a little bit. And it's going to create just a little bit of variation. But with this many sounds, it's probably going to be able to create enough variation. What I don't like about this one, can I turn these ones on and off? So there's a few things, like, you know, and I'm kind of biased working with the Wise Way. One of the things I don't really love about this is that, like, say I get these 18 in here and I find one of them that's annoying. Well, but I'm like, I don't know if it's annoying or if I just want, if I want it there or not. I can't just like turn it on and off. Like, I like it that you have the ability in Wise to be able to like throw a bunch in there and turn off the ones that you're like, yeah, that's probably a little excessive. I don't really know if I need that. Here you have to actually just delete them out of your list, which is kind of annoying, but I mean, it is what it is. So if we listen to it from the top, let's listen to it. Maybe I'll offset that just a little bit. And I'm just adding a lot of extra space here because I don't want these things to be going all the time. I want them to be able to just kind of offset, like just kind of go randomly. So let's save this thing out, and we can probably do some more mixing with it here just a little bit, but just out of the gates, this is where you're gonna do your sound design. Although I do have to say, you know, while I'm bagging on this compared to Wise in terms of some of the signal flow, I love the DAW style layout, and I do think that is pretty badass. So what we want to do is add that sound to the crane. So it's called crane. Let's add that to the crane over here, and let's add it to the far crane right here. So let's add component emitter, FMOD Studio, SSON Studio emitter. We want to start when basically the object is built in the level. We don't want to stop this thing because it's going to loop forever. And let's add, oops, I need to build my bank. I forgot to do that. So F7, let's build banks. Now over here it should show up. Crane. Cool. And that's all there is to it. So let's try it, see if it works. Yes. Maybe I have the wood a little too separated far apart. That's not bad though. Kind of like it. Okay. It's subtle, but when you start adding a lot of things into your environment, you don't want you to just be a barrage of sound. I don't know. I think like in film, I think most game sound is a little hyper real. Like things have too much sound. Like like in film, next time you watch like a movie or whatever, and a dog runs through the scene or a horse runs through the scene, they always whinny or they always bark or they always meow if it's a cat. The animals always, like basically the kind of the rule is if you see it, you hear it in film, and they kind of apply the same rules to game, but I feel like it's almost too obvious. It doesn't feel like real. They're getting better at it, and these game audio engines are getting a lot better at creating that effect, but it's still a little weird. I think the proximity works pretty well, but if I wanted to change this, for instance, I could change the 3D aspect of this thing. So right now, if I want to, right now it's between 1 and 20. So if I bump this up to say 40, and if I F7, just build my bank, what's cool is in here, you see so now that's my radius of where I'm going to be able to hear this thing. So now I'm going to be able to hear this. Maybe that's a little bit too big, but that's going to be my curve. So what I would probably do is I don't know if I can change the curve so easy in here. So like, yeah, I can't change my curve. I want my curve to be a little bit steeper, but whatever. I can't adjust that, which is kind of annoying. But I'll go back down to say, let's go 25. Rebuild my bank, save, go back over to Unity, and it shrank down a little bit. Can't tell too much, but it's a little bit smaller. So I think that's good. So let's take a look at how we actually can profile this game. One of the things that I couldn't figure out last time, and I kind of got it licked now, is being able to profile the game so I can watch what's happening. I think from a troubleshooting standpoint, it's really important that we be able to see what's going on in the game. So if I go to my window and I want to go watch my where is my profiler? I want to see what's happening in the game and how we connect the game to the actual to FMOD while it's playing in live. So with our profiler window right here, what we do is we need to create basically a new session. So a new session is a profiling session. So I'll just call this session 1. And what it does by default, it's gonna monitor the master bus, so we can actually watch what's going on with the sounds and everything. But we want to add a little bit some more stuff into this. So let's we can just drag events into this thing. I believe I've only done this once. There we go. So if I want to watch what's happening with the crane, we can see what's going on with the crane in this thing. And no, I don't need to do editor. But we can also look across the top here what we want to see happening. Also, I can look at show data graphs. If I want to look at like things, let's open event in. I want to open up like let's look at the number of instances of self. So on the crane, I can look at how many instances of the crane there are, or if I want to look at the CPU or like, well, we can look at CPU. Yeah, that's fine. And if we want to look at things like, where is that? Show data graphs. Let's do levels. Sure. So now we can look at the crane also as well as the system. So if we want to look at all the system resources being used, and we can look at individual sounds, like what's happening with the individual sounds in there. So let's run this thing. This is a little harder to do on one screen. Usually I put one on one screen and one on the other, but we'll just make this thing work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the game. Connect game 5 localhost. Let's say it's going to be like I can't. So I'm going to say retry in background. So what that's going to do is it's going to try reconnecting. So when I start playing the game, it's automatically going to connect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start recording. You don't have to record, but it helps. So I'm going to play the game for a little bit. It's harder. I've got this weird bug where if I alt tab to it, let's get the sound. Let's see if it works. So we can see it recording right now. It's connected. I'm gonna leave it for a second because I've got this kind of bug where if I go back to the game right now, it's doing some weird spinning thing. But we can see like, here's my overall. We can see my waveforms. What's actually playing. It's actually using a 5.1 pattern right now. So this is my 5.1, which is kind of strange. Look at a CPU mix of the mixer. It's really small. And then we can also go look at things like in my, oh, this is my torch. I meant to do crane. Oh, there's my crane. You can see how much it's using. It's the level. So we've got our peak underneath and our RMS on top. And I can't stop. And we can look at the number of voices. I guess we're seeing it's just one, only using one voice at a time. If you have multiples like enemies or something like that, it's gonna cause, it's gonna do a lot. It's gonna use a lot more. No, here, let's see if it works for me. Yep. See, this is where it does it. I don't know why it does this. This is driving me crazy. Every time I go back to the game, I get this like spinning forever thing. It's misinterpreting some of my I don't know. Whenever I alt tab back to it, it drives me nuts. I can't do it. But now we can go through and I was working for me at one point, but then it keeps doing that fucking spinning thing. It drives me crazy. So now we have, at least we can go back and we can profile and make sure everything that's playing is supposed to be playing, voices total, and seeing how it's playing. You can record this and you can watch it real time, or you can record it. Having two monitors really helps because you can have it going on the other monitor there. But it's kind of cool. We can see that we're actually profiling and that it's actually working there. So that's cool. Just to see that, like when you're trying to troubleshooting, if a sound isn't playing, you're like, is it playing or not? As your scene gets more and more dense with stuff, you're gonna find that there's gonna be things that are missing and things that are there. Oh, I got a lot of torches here. Okay, so that was our profiler. So what we want to do next is start adding some music and some into the game. But to be honest, this, like, I didn't have enough stems prepared for something like this. I don't compose that much, and so I didn't really have a lot here. It's really dense in a really short amount of time, but I want to show it to you because I think it's neat. It shows the potential of this. Like I said, we're going to spend a lot more of this time of this kind of material next semester. That's what we're doing. Game Audio 2 is going to be doing a lot more of the music composition stuff, but I want to show you how it's done. So I'm going to watch just this audio from Viking Village guy. This is the tutorial series that we're using. I want to go back to, oh, not that one. Let's do Footsteps and Music. Yeah, this one.
Welcome back.
I'm gonna have him show his thing real quick, just because I don't have the content to do it. I don't have the material, but I think it's interesting. So let's just watch this, and then I'll do a quick discussion afterwards on this. It's like 5 minutes. It's not too long.
To video 4 in this series. Right now, I'll be talking about the music and the footstep audio systems. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos in this series, go do that because they provide important context and techniques within FMOD. If you have seen the previous videos, then welcome back and let's get to it. When it comes to the music, it's a good idea to know beforehand what type of system you want to build. Maybe you just want to use one stereo track, or maybe you have multiple tracks of different instruments or sections of the music. In this case, we're only using one music track that I composed over a year ago, and that contains a melody layer and a chord and drone layer. The approach to creating a music event is just like any other event in FMOD. Right-click, new event, let's call it music. And just notice one thing, over here in the dock you have a 3D panner. Just click on this and delete it for now. By removing the 3D panner, you're changing this event audio from a 3D object to a 2D object. And this is exactly what we want in this case, because the music is not coming from a point in the world, such as a radio. It's coming directly to our ears, seemingly from nowhere. So since there's going to be multiple layers in this music event, let's just create another track and open up the audio bin. Look for the music, in this case, here and here. So just click and drag the first one, and click and drag the second one. Close this. And as always, it's good practice to label your tracks if you have more than one. So this is chords, and this is melody. And this is a personal preference, but I prefer the melody on top, similar to how you would read a musical score. And just zoom out using the shortcut, Control and Command square bracket left.
It's not control. It's just square bracket left. Oh, that's old. It's just square bracket left and right, for right and left.
And now to listen to what it sounds like. Okay, now let's add some logic to it. When you're adding logic on the logic track over here, first you want to create markers for sections of the song. Now, normally you would want to add the tempo of the music like this. Add tempo marker, drag it down, and write the tempo. And you could also change the time signature over here if you wanted to. And then you would go up to here where you have time and beats, and you would select beats. And now you can see the bar numbers, and it would be easier to follow the music. In cases like this, the tempo actually changes at every bar. So you could change the tempo at every bar by adding a lot of tempo markers, but we've decided to just go with the time instead of the tempo. The next step would be to figure out if you want any sections to loop. So in this case, I want the verse to loop back to the verse and the chorus to keep looping on itself. So add loop, drag it down, drag it all the way here, and same thing for chorus, add loop. And if you listen to how this sounds now, and perfect. Now if you notice, I've added some green looking markers. These markers are called transitions, and as their name implies, they're used to transition from one point to another. So in this case, while you're playing back over here, it's going to play back, and then once you reach this point, it's going to go to chorus, which is over here. To create a transition marker, simply right-click in the Logic Tracks area and go to Add Transition to, and pick a place. I'm going to do Outro. And since I've already got some over here as markers, I'm just going to drag and they're going to snap. And now that the markers are done, let's try playing. And you can see when it reaches this green line, it goes directly to this chorus section. But what if we don't want that? What if we want the verse section to keep playing? This is where trigger conditions come in. So if you click on...
So just let's stop and talk about this for a second here. Because this, I mean, he's brushing over some pretty complex topics very quickly here, just kind of assuming that we understand a lot of this. What this is going to require us to think about is thinking about music in a nonlinear approach. So when we compose in traditional music formats, and even if we're talking about something like live, for like using Ableton or something like that, where you're using trigger or like launching loops and well, yeah, I guess. Well, I'm gonna stay away from Ableton for a minute. Let's just think about this like from a traditional standpoint. So when we think about composing music, we think about it kind of like this in a timeline where we have, basically our intro, our verse, chorus, outro, and we compose and we build sounds and music based upon this linear timeline. But in games where we have to have the game actually respond to what people are doing in the game, and it has to be going on and on forever. We want to create a rich and complex experience with a limited number of materials. So what he's doing here is basically it's going to go, it can start with the intro, so the game will start playing. So if we have launched this like right when the game starts, it's going to start playing this intro right here, and then it's going to go into the verse. And if we didn't have these markers right here, it's just going to infinitely loop on this verse right here, and it's going to sound probably pretty good. But this is going to get very loopy. And so what he wants to do here is he's going to add these transitions. So he's starting to think about how so I've got these two main sections that are going to loop back and forth. And then we're going to start to add more complexity by jumping around within that. So you have to start thinking about what works with what. So when you compose, you have to start thinking about you take a higher up level approach to thinking about your music in terms of can I hop between here and here and here and here? And that to me is kind of like the Ableton approach, where it's kind of like in your clip launching, where you're basically going through and hopping around it'd be like being able to hop around anywhere in your scene view. Like if you're clicking on scenes in Ableton, you can hop around anywhere and have that thing sound like it's belongs together. So you have to start thinking about like things like key changes and even tempo changes and instrumentation and arrangement changes dynamically. And that is kind of the Ableton approach. Is like, how do you do that? But it's going to be done kind of randomly, and not even randomly. It's going to be defined by what happens in the game. So if they get closer towards, like, basically what I would do is if I get closer towards the boss, like basically I have this section here and it's looping, but as I get closer to the boss, maybe I have another one right here that's going to add a little bit of tension, or like a new drum beat. Like basically maybe you have this kind of like this thing kind of going on right here. And then as you get closer towards the end of the level, like some music, like a kick drum starts going doof, 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 and then you're like, oh, something's happening. And so then that's what's going to start triggering you, like, okay, that's like emotionally preparing you that you're getting closer to this thing and start to add some intensity there. But it's, again, you still have to think about music in a different way. Like your compositions in a different approach. And so he's way oversimplifying this, because like obviously this guy knows what he's doing a lot, because I won't say oversimplifying, but brushing a lot of the complexity under the rug. The composition complexity that goes along with this is pretty tough. So but now he's going to start adding some logic in here, and we'll see how he does this. It's pretty cool.
On one of the markers, you'll notice over here under conditions, we can add trigger conditions with this plus, but there's nothing here right now. So we have to add a parameter. Just go up here to the plus, click on it, add parameter. Let's call this verse. 0 to 1, min max. 0 is going to be off, 1 is going to be on. And so now when you click on the marker, go to chorus for the chorus marker and set this to 1 like this. And whenever the cursor reaches this marker, if the chorus is set to 1, it will transition to the chorus. If it is not 1, if it is 0, it's going to keep looping unless outro is 1, then it's going to go to the outro. Now just fill in the rest of these markers. Here's a demo of that. So let's say it's playing in the verse and the outro is 1. And since we're using 2 layers, we're using a melody and a chord layer, I'm going to create another parameter that's going to determine whether the melody layer is on or off. And I can actually use this melody in parameter to automate the volume of this melody layer. To do that, I right-click on the knob, add automation, and I click on the melody in parameter, and now I just add 2 points. So when the parameter is at 0 over here, it's going to be off, and add another point, and when the parameter is at 1, it's going to be playing at full volume. Here's how that sounds. And since in the game the melody is going to be transitioning to on or off, we want to make that a little bit smoother than just a sudden and jarring effect. So if we click twice on a parameter such as melody in, that opens up the smoothing in the dock. With this 6-speed knob, you can change the rate of how quickly a parameter goes from one point to the next. So right now it's on instant, and if we increase it to something like 0.33 per second, listen to what kind of effect that has now. So now that this music system is done, it's ready to be integrated into Unity. So just before you do.
So just to also explain a little bit more, one of the things that's annoying, well, I guess it's not annoying, it's just different, is what he's doing is essentially he's using real-time parameter controls to create switch states. And in Wise speak, we use switches. So basically you could set up a different kind of a switch system. So basically this, when you're in the verse, it's going to play this, and these other, basically it's going to be using a switch. But here, what's odd is is that FMOD doesn't have switch states. So what he's doing is he's essentially creating a switch state system using real-time parameter controls here. So what he does is basically turns it up, on, and off over here. We'll see, it's going to become a little more clear when we do the footstep thing here, but just to kind of prime you for what he's doing here, he's basically creating switch states.
Do that, remember to assign this event to the bank and build. Now that we have a music event, we can attach it on an object in Unity. Let's find the main character, go to Add Component, FMOD Event Emitter, and just like on the crane, under Play Event, go under Object Start, when the game starts, when this object starts, look for the event, music, and now you can see that these are the parameters that we created, but we can also set the initial values when the game first starts. So since by default the music event starts at the intro, let's not worry about the verse, chorus, or outro, but we do want the melody to come in from the beginning, so let's check this and set the value to 1, or in this case, on. So right now, if we started the game, if we played the scene, you would hear the music, but you wouldn't hear any interactivity. And that's because we haven't yet set any trigger zones that are going to change the music to the verse, chorus, or the outro. So the easiest way to create a trigger zone is to right-click, create 3D cube, and just delete the mesh filter and mesh renderer. You won't need those. So all you have is this box trigger area. Now just change the scale of the object. And once that's done, position this to the area of the map where you want the chorus to be heard. And just rename it so you know what it is. And an important thing about the box collider, for this, make sure trigger is checked. Otherwise, if it wasn't checked, this would be an invisible wall to the player and the player could not enter this area. And in order for this trigger to work, we have to attach an FMOD script. So go add component. We want the FMOD studio parameter trigger script. And then over here where it says target, it's currently set to none, but you have to drag your player. So whatever your player is in your scene, click and drag your player onto here. And now it opens up another option. So for trigger, we'll do on trigger enter. So when the player enters this trigger zone, and then the collision tag. So our player has the collision tag or a tag of player. So let's go to player. And finally over here, we can see the event that is associated with the player. So on the player object, we have the music event. So if we open up this disclosure triangle, we can see that these are all of the parameters we set in FMOD for this event. So now you would set the parameters you want to change whenever the player enters this area. So since this is the chorus music trigger, I want the chorus to be playing. And I also want the melody to be set to 1, just in case the player was previously in an area where the melody was not playing. So now that you know how to make a trigger zone, set up a lot of them for your music, for all your other events. This is what I have for the music system in this level. So at certain areas, you're going to hear the chorus, you're going to hear the outro, you're not going to hear the melody. Here's a demo of that, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you how the music transitions from melody in to melody out based on the trigger zone. So those are the concepts that went into making the music system for this level. Now let's take a look at the footstep system. For the footstep of
So just, yeah, there was a lot happening there very quickly. I think that it kind of brushed that kind of stuff under the rug, the complexity of that sort of system there. But it's pretty cool, and it's one of those things that you can emotionally, done well, you can coach the emotion of the player based off of music. And I don't know, the transition of the fade in and fade out of the melody is a little funky to me, but he's a far better composer than I could ever be, so I'm not gonna complain about it. But it's a little funky there, but I think it's pretty, but the music is pretty good, and I think they do a pretty neat job of the blending. And so you have to set up a lot of triggers, and I don't know if you caught that, but if you look in his world, they show it right here. What was that? I want him to show his
transitions from melody in to melody out based on the trigger zone.
I want to see his trigger zones right here. He showed it only briefly for a second there.
So now that you know how to make a trigger zone, set up a lot of them for your music, for all your other events. This is what.
All right, that's what I'm looking for. So he created a music zones right here. So you can see all the different triggers he set up through here. So every time, basically you're on this walk right here, there's all these different kind of transitions that in there, and there are all these box colliders that are set up for that. So pretty cool though. Okay, so let's talk about the footstep system here that he's going to do here. How much time do we have? We're looking at time. Okay, not tons. Yeah, okay, let's just do this. I'm gonna have him watch. Let's watch his thing, and then let's go back and actually let's do it, because I want to show you. I want to talk about it a little bit. Let's back it up.
The arraycast system that detects multiple footstep surfaces. So those are the concepts that went into making the music system for this level. Now let's take a look at the footstep system. For the footstep event, you first have to decide how footsteps are going to be called from your game into FMOD. It could be a single footstep for all the surfaces. It could be a raycast system that detects multiple footstep surfaces. In this case, we have 4 footstep surface types, and the script in Unity is outputting either one of those 4 surface types or a combination. That means that if you're standing on a surface such as sand and water, for example, there's a puddle of water on the sand surface, we're going to be able to blend those 2 sounds together.
Actually, I'm just gonna do it, because I his tutorial is not bad, but I want to go through the process ourselves, because there's a few things I want to talk about while we go through and do this. So let's go over to FMOD and let's create the footstep system essentially. Whoops. So let's create a new. This is so this would footsteps be a 2D or 3D event? What do you think? What should I set this up as?
I'd say 3D
How come?
because they're coming from an actual place in the game rather than just like from
Yeah, I
normal.
would. Well, I don't disagree. Well, okay, I guess I do disagree a little bit, but um, I would say you want footsteps for like other characters to be 3D for sure, but for you because they're not going. It doesn't mean that you can't set them like the levels where they are, but generally speaking, they're not going to be changing. So I'm going to set this one up as a 2D. You could set it up as a 3D and just have it always be, but it's not going to be get any. It's never going to change. So
I
based
see,
off
because
of
the
positions,
distance from the foot to the camera or whatever will never change, or like
right?
we're like barely change.
Yeah, and so for all intents and purposes, it's probably just easier to do as a 2D event there. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna call it footsteps. Actually, I'll do this player footsteps because you might have other characters. If I hear theirs, let's assign it to main bank. And so, like I said before, what's annoying, like once you know that how a switch system works, it's really annoying to not have that ability to do that here. So you have to kind of you have to do this workaround system with FMOD. So let's do this. Let's add a few different audio tracks, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a different audio track for each um, footstep system, and then inside of here I'm going to add a multi-instrument for the random each of the footsteps. So let's see, let's do CV. Oh, won't let me do that. So I just have to add multiple instruments. So each of our surfaces here, multi-instrument. Okay, and let's go through and add some sounds into our audio bin. I could do it here. I could do it from here as well, but let's add a new folder. Footstep. And inside of here, I'm going to create a new folder inside of here. Actually, so I could go through and create footsteps. I don't have time to do that really today. So what I'm going to do is cheat a little bit, and I'm going to steal the footsteps we use for Cube. And oops, I don't know. Don't do anything with that. Give me black. Where is that? So it's under my downloads. I think under my Wise 101 stuff. Here's my old Wise 101 folder that is using. So if I go into, so if you ever like need to go get your sounds from these things, so like lesson 7, we were pretty far along. So I could do probably any of these later lessons probably have all the footsteps that we need in them. But I'll just go to 11.7 Wise project, and we can always find it in the originals right here. Here's my originals, sound effects, and here's all the original sounds that we pulled in there. So what I'm going to do is they named them as FS footstep. So what do we have here? We have concrete, dirt, gravel, tile. Let's do this. Because I'm cheating right now. And the folder. What was the last one? I forgot. Was it grass or something like that? Dirt. You can do this later. It's just for in terms of organizing things. I think it helps me out. So let's do. We're in dirt. Let's do dirt. Oops, not that folder. Actually, I'm gonna do this from my little bin, my window. I'm gonna do it from my audio bin. It's a little easier. It's a nice small window. Let's open this up. Dirt. Oops, got concrete selected there. Cool. Let's do concrete. I need gravel. And tile. These don't match up with what they're doing in the game, but that's okay for right now. We're walking just through the process of this thing. Cool. So now we have our events, player footstep, assets. let's do, actually, as we rename these, so let's do concrete. So let's do concrete. Let's drag these into our multi-instrument here. Dirt. Gravel. And tile. Cool. All right. I can shrink all these up. These are way too long. So I can just drag this down, or I can say right click, resize the current content's length. So it'll just resize it to the shortest one. I can also, like, I probably don't need all this extra junk at the end. So I could, you actually can do a quick little fade out on this thing. So if I just wanted to fade this thing out, because that's probably too much sound that we need right there. Whatever. Go trim these up a little bit and add some fades on them. Now the problem is right now, as you would imagine, these are all, every time I press play, it's going to pull one of all of these sounds out of each one of these things here. So we're hearing all of those. So what we need to do is we need to set up a switch state system for this, so that basically based off of whatever's happening in the game, it's only going to play one of these here. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to create a new parameter, and we'll call this one 0 to 1. We'll just call this one concrete. And what I want to do is I want to automate these, like just like we did kind of with the music system. What I want to do is I want to automate these so that this one's up and that these are all down. So what's going to happen is I'm going to add automation here. And basically under concrete, I'm going to add 2 points. So if concrete is true or is on, I want it to be 100% gain. And I want these other ones, actually I should go back over here. I want to add automation to these as well. Automation. So basically, let's bring these down. So in concrete, I want these to be 0 and I want this one to be 1. So basically, if concrete is true, then this is what it's going to look like here. And I'm going to do the same thing for each of the other ones. So I'm going to create a parameter here for what, dirt, and one for gravel, and one for tile. Oops, and one more for tile. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just going to say, I want you to automate this up. I'm not going to automate the other ones down, because it may be that you on tile and whatever, dirt and concrete, you can play them both at the same time. So basically, if this is true, all I want to say is that if this is true, turn it up. If this is true, turn it up. If this is true, turn this one up. And if this is true, turn this one up. So that's all we're basically going to do here. So I'm going to write dirt one. I want to add my point here and a point here. And for my gravel one, bring that down. For my gravel one, I want to do one here at 0. And for my tile one, I'll do that here. Cool. So now if we go, we can kind of see it happening, doing its thing here. So it goes, so gravel, concrete's on, if dirt's on. So these are my switch states, so to speak. But it's not really a switch state. It's more just a parameter saying basically, if I'm on gravel, this goes to 1. And so in the game, they basically are monitoring. And you can do this through, well, the way he does it is different. Basically, they have some sort of like game controller. We kind of saw this in the Wise audio game, but there's a game controller that basically it monitors what surface the person is on. If it were kind of the way I would imagine doing this is that we want to create a switch state where basically if we walk around and we on trigger enter, it's going to switch the state over here. And we could certainly do that. But the problem with that is that right now there's no footsteps being played. So we don't have a footstep generator going on. So the way they do it in this thing right here is he basically gives you this on here. He gives you this script right here. So you download the script and you implement the script. But the problem is that script is broken. And I spent hours trying to figure out how to fix the script because it went from, so it was a script that was implemented in version 1.0, but in FMOD 2.0, they deprecated, or they don't use that term anymore. So they changed the way the code works, and I could not find a workaround for it. So it was driving me crazy. So, so basically this footstep system, the way he shows it, does not work. So I could get it to work if I had something that was saying playing footstep, 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 footstep. I need an event creator. So basically it triggers an event every single time. And if I did that, then I could go through and I could create my box colliders. Basically, like if I'm on wood, I need more on here, but if I were stop, like if I want to create a new object, we could say, let's create a 3D object cube, and we want this to be our trigger, our trigger condition type thing. So basically I would, where is it? Can I see it? There it is. We'll turn off our mesh renderer, and we want this to be is trigger. And let's scale this thing up a little bit. We could use that and basically sets a FMOD Studio parameter trigger. I want the target to be the player. Oops, I lost it. We got to get out of here. It's time. Cube. So basically I could add my player to this thing. I'm not gonna have time for it. Maybe I'll follow up with this next class, but and I'm gonna do some experimenting, see if I can get this thing to work. But basically, if he goes into this trigger right here, it's going to, where's my player? Sorry, I'm gonna try this real quick. Got too many things open. I wish there was like a way you could tag like a favorites so that if I touch something, it doesn't open up everything. It's quality manager, which is weird. So this is my player right here. So I need to get back to cube. Well, let me do that. Okay. All right. Well, we got to get out of here right now. So I'll work on that. But basically, it's kind of weird. Yeah. Other characters too. Yeah. So basically, you basically have to create this automation system, which is kind of like a switch system in there. And it's a little complex. But basically, every time you walk in there, I want it to switch to a to wood or to water or to tile or whatever it is on top of that. So that's basically what we're going to work on that. And then next time I want to talk about a little bit of mixing. So what I would encourage you to do, so again, I want you to go through and watch those videos and basically build the scene out here and get familiar with connecting FMOD to Unity. It's not too bad on the surface level, but when you want to start doing more complex stuff, it gets kind of complex kind of quick, which is something that we just kind of have to like learn how to deal with. But we're not going to spend a lot more time on FMOD right now. So we're basically going to spend this today and the next class on FMOD, have a little FMOD project, and then we're going to dive straight into Unreal for the next couple weeks. So, because I think Unreal is badass. It's going to be interesting. So anyway, it's 4:47. I apologize for going a little bit late, but I'll stick around if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you all next class. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Ciao.